Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Living Lives. Today, my guest is Michael O'Flaherty. He's recently retired after 28 years as the resident music director at Goodspeed Musicals, where he music directed over 100 musicals during his tenure. While at Goodspeed, he worked with many of the best writers, composers, actors, and directors in the business. His Broadway credits include Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, A Streetcar Named Desire, and Andrew Lloyd Webber's By Jeeves. He has also worked at Paper Mill Playhouse, North Shore Music Theater, Playwrights Horizons, Ford's Theater, the Brooklyn Academy of Music, the Kennedy Center, Pittsburgh Public Theater, and the Smithsonian Institution. He was the musical supervisor and cabaret director of the Williamston Theater Festival for 11 seasons. Currently, Michael is an adjunct professor and director at the Hart School of the University of Hartford and is writing a number of original musicals with other collaborators. Welcome, Michael, to the show.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's good to see you again.
You too.
Thanks for joining me on the show today. And, we met up at Easton Mountain, where people are that seems to be a broken record on my show. I meet a lot of people up at Easton Mountain who are really interesting that I have on my show. So, and you're another one of them. And when we were there, it's funny, I live in Connecticut. I'm in musical theater, yet I've never been to the Goodspeed Opera House, and you were there for 28 years. So I know it's a travesty on my part, but
I'm still trying to forgive you for that, but I'm working through it.
When you there's the Goodspeed there as a picture of it. It's a beautiful old building. Can you tell us where the theater is in there?
The theater is actually the top two floors of that picture. It was built by a shipping magnate, William Goodspeed, and he ran shipping lines from New York City up the Connecticut River, and most of it was commercial, and he would import all kinds of things and everything. So all his businesses were on the lower three levels, two levels that you can see there, and one even beneath that. And then he built the Opera House on top of it, but he would literally import the audience up from New York on his steamboat lines, and not all of the audience, but some. And so he had all these businesses going, and his big mansion was right across the street from that, facing, and it burned down quite a while ago. But so he had quite a little empire going in East Haddam, Connecticut. There.
That's cool. I will definitely make it up. Are they open yet?
No, they're doing some stuff in a tent on the parking lot right now, doing some small shows and everything just to keep alive. The plan is to reopen the Opera House September 24th with Rodgers and Hammerstein review called "It's a Grand Night for Singing." Mm-hmm. So they're going to start a little small, and then by next season they're figuring they'll reopen with big shows. I mean, normally they do much bigger shows, but they're going to just work our way back in a little bit. So.
Yeah, it's definitely, being involved with the Ridgefield Theater Barn. I'm not on the board anymore, but we're also struggling with that. And we're obviously a much smaller theater. We only seat 70. And we put an outdoor stage. As a matter of fact, I'm going to see our improv show was moved outside because of some of the increase in the variance in the area, where while we can do shows outside, we're doing this outside. So
sure.
Not sure what's going to happen after that, but it's definitely starting slow. And our kids program is all moved outside, which is great. That kids shouldn't be inside in the summer anyway. So we have an outdoor stage, and it's good. So.
Well, they've done Goodspeed has done like 5 shows outside now, and they've been very successful with it. They've done, again, they're small. They're just, they're more like club acts. They're cabaret kind of shows. Yeah. The one coming up, it's opening tomorrow. Actually, though, is a full-scale musical. It's going to be it's called Little Girl Blue, and it's the life of Nina Simone, the famous jazz singer, blues singer, and so that one is a more full-length, actual semi-staged musical. But the others were, cabarets. But they've been selling. They've been doing rather well. People are dying to see something.
I know. I know.
I want to come to the theater.
I know, and it's just we want to enjoy and laughter and fun and be challenged, with our emotions and things.
Yeah.
That aside from just sitting at home, so it's definitely good that things are coming back.
Yeah.
So one of the things that when we were chatting up at Easton that I really enjoyed hearing about, and I thought maybe the audience would too, is some of the connections you've made. My show's all about connections. So some of the connections you've made with the assistants you've had over the years. Now you spent 28 years as the music director for Goodspeed. And can you talk about the assistant program that you had?
Yeah, I mean, we do 3 shows on the main stage and 3 shows on our smaller theater every year, and so it's a lot of work. And obviously, I have a staff to help with that. I have usually an assistant music director who is a professional person being paid, but and that sort of is a different person on different shows. But in addition to that, we would every year hire a it's not an intern position. It's better than that because the person needs to have much more qualification than just like an apprentice or intern situation, because they would have to do all the copying in the computer and programming of the synthesizers and play rehearsals, and so it's a highly skilled position, but it's still for somebody very young, just starting out in the business. And over the years, I had, I think, as many as 20 of these people. Young folks who just wanted to break into this field, and I've basically kept in touch with almost every single one of them over the years, and they've all gone on to have careers. Like I said, usually it was a year. Sometimes they would stay for 2 years. One guy actually came back and did an additional year, so he was there 3 years. But sometimes I would hire them back in an upgraded position, and other times they would just go off into the world, and I'd send my children off. But I actually sort of think of them as my kids. I mean, I don't have children of my own, and these guys they're almost all guys. Strangely enough, only 2 women that I've ever had in this position, but they are kind of my kids, and I sent them out in the world, and they, I hope they learned something from the experience here. But what I love about it is that we do stay in touch, and they will constantly call me or text me and ask for help, or do I know anyone that can do this for them? It has become a network, and many of them know each other now because we've just all sort of maintained this little group, and they kind of overlap, and but they all know each other. And for instance, the gentleman who is replacing me at the Goodspeed is one of these kids. It was one of the very first ones that I ever worked with. I met him when he was 17, and he's now not 17 anymore. And he has now taken over my position there and is doing great and everything. But he basically, after he left Goodspeed, he went out and he did the national tours of Wicked and Spamalot, and I mean he was really doing lots of amazing stuff. And then he and I always sort of knew that he wanted to come here and do this job, and as soon as I retired, he wanted to come back, and so here he is. But and he is now hiring some of the other people that I have trained. Okay. One of my other assistants is now coming back to assist Adam. So it's like it's a very incestuous little group of music directors, and but it's great. I just feel so strongly about that. It's part of the reason that I'm teaching at the Hart School now. I could have just retired and just sat by the pool all day, but I just figure I've got 50 years of experience in this, 28 at Goodspeed and many before that. And if I'm not going to give it back in some way, then what was it worth? What good was it? And so I'm actually teaching and directing at the Hart School, and it's really fun. And kids seem to like knowing that I actually came from the professional world, and yes. They love my stories and my gossip, and I tell them things about their favorite stars that they had no idea.
It's interesting. In a lot of different fields, academics. I was just listening to one of Brene Brown's podcasts this morning, and she was talking about how I can't think the guy she had on, but they were talking about how a lot of the professors don't break out of academia because they're afraid to actually go out on their own, afraid of failure. And another one they had talked about it's hard to train somebody in the real world if you haven't had any real world experience. So, a lot of people who were in professorships went all the way up through school, became professors, and have been teaching, but there's no real experience backing that up, which then doesn't give the kids going through whatever the degree program is some, hard stories. So the fact that you're going back and doing that is phenomenal for the kids that you're teaching.
I will say the Hart School is unusual in the fact that many of the faculty are, in fact, professional people who have, for one reason or another, just thought, I'm tired of that. I just want to go give back. I want to teach. Some might have been like me, retired. I don't know. But for instance, I'm directing Anything Goes for them. And the choreographer that I'm using was a student at the Hart School and now is a teacher of dance at the Hart School and is coming back as a choreographer. So, I mean, he's still having a career. He's auditioning all the time and everything. But in the meantime, especially during COVID, he, there were no shows. So he came up and was teaching at the Hart School, and he's a terrific young kid. I mean, he's not a kid, but to me, everybody's a kid.
It's all in the perspective.
But I'm thrilled to get to know him. I mean, I think he's really going to bring a lot to it. And I've talked to the students about him, and they love him. They just think he's great because he's so close to their own age, and was a student there and all that. So, but yeah, I mean, talking about connections, this business is all about connections. The theater business is, as a music director, for instance, you can't audition for the part. You can't really. I mean, you sometimes interview for the part, but it's all about this job leads to that job leads to that job. It's all about who you work with. The reason I came to Goodspeed was to do one show. It was just a single show that I was supposed to do. And the reason I got that was because I had worked with the guy who was going to be the director of the show. And he and I had done some industrial shows together. And so he really liked me. And so he knew they were looking for a music director for the show, put my name forward. And lo and behold, 28 years later, I'm still there. But that happened because of a connection. It wasn't, I didn't seek that job. This job, the job that I just left. I didn't like interview for it or anything like that. I eventually did meet Michael Price and Sue Frost, and they had to approve my hiring, but it was all about connections. And the reason I was connected to him was because of work I did at the Williamstown Theater Festival, and I met so many people there, and it's all connected. And I always tell students this too. It's easier for actors in a way. Well, it's not easy. Being an actor is never easy, but at least they can sign up and go to auditions, and they can strut their stuff in front of someone and get a job. It's very hard for music directors to do that, but I always tell them, even
in the tech field, really.
Yeah, but even so, I always tell young actors, you have to maintain your reputation, because this job will lead to that job, will lead to that job. And if you get a bad rep in one theater, you'd be surprised how
everybody knows about it.
Everybody finds out. It's a much smaller world than you think it is. And yes, you can come in and audition, but still, we would see hundreds and hundreds of people auditions for every show. And if we get down to 2 or 3 people and we can't make a decision between those 3, we will start making phone calls and calling people that are on their resumes and checking out those connections. And if we get even an inkling of, I don't know, she was kind of trouble, that one, gone. Yeah, we just don't need it, especially at a place like Goodspeed, where they come up and it's a 16-week period and they stay here and they live in our housing and they're living in close quarters with all the other actors. If there's a problem, it just infects everything,
Right.
So.
And that's the case even, in community theater. We do the same thing. And a lot of our tech people, but also a lot of our actors and actresses come from referrals. I worked with so-and-so down at this theater. They'd be great for the show and they were fun to work with, So it's definitely a small, I don't want to say inbred because that's the wrong word, but
I said incestuous. So yeah,
it's definitely a connected business, and people, especially if there's a problem, talk, which is typical of human nature anyway. Uh,
Yeah, I think the average person doesn't really understand how people get jobs in the theater and how it works. Or not just theater, all of shows is how connected it is. It's not where you can just like send a resume in and have an interview. It's very different than that. It really is.
mhm.
And I mean, I've met so many amazing people in Williamstown and other places that I worked, and each one would lead to the next thing. And for a while, I had a manager, and that didn't really work out because the manager doesn't really get you work. So
Yeah.
I was still generating all the work, and the manager was just taking 10%. So I ended that.
Doesn't seem.
Yeah, that didn't last long, but it was all based on my personal connections with other people. So
So now that you're retired from the Goodspeed, what are you doing?
I'm writing a lot, in addition to working at the Heart School, but I'm also writing. I've I've done a couple things with a partner that he's actually from my hometown, and we've known each other. Again, I knew him when he was 13 years old, and he's still there running a theater at home that I started, and it's now in its 50th year. Amateur theater. We all start in amateur theater. We all do. Um, and he's doing that, and so we had started writing a couple things, and we're currently writing another one. And then, but I met another person at a party. Strangely enough, I was just at a party, and I overheard this guy saying, "Yeah, I'm writing a musical." And my ear obviously perked, and I went over to him and said, "I know a little bit about writing musicals, and maybe we should talk about it." And now we're about to complete our second show that we wrote through the quarantine, through the pandemic. We wrote these two musicals. So
Prospects in getting them
well, not yet, because the one of them we're having to do a demo recording of it first, because it takes place through a lot of periods of history, and it's sort of pop rock music. And to have me just sit at the piano and play and sing those songs is not going to give any representation of what these songs are really like.
Right.
So we've hired this guy that a connection through a connection through a connection, and I found this guy, and he's just terrific, and he's creating orchestra tracks for us for these pop songs.
Nice.
Pop rock, actually. They're pretty, and it's kind of stuff that I wouldn't really know how to do so much, but I mean, I wrote all the songs, but he's creating all these orchestrations and putting tracks down. And then we're going to have to put singers on, because we wouldn't be able to sell the show without that. And then the other one is a little bit more straightforward musical theater kind of writing. So I will probably just do a demo of that myself when it's done. But the problem is, right now, it's not the time to be submitting a lot of new work to theaters, because they're just not. They're not receptive right now.
They don't want to take the risk. I mean, they're already taking risk putting shows up in general, but taking a risk on a new musical is like, unless it was already in the works.
They're not even going to listen to it at this point. I mean, they're so busy just trying to put their ducks in a row and get the place open again. But I know a lot of people in a lot of theaters all around. So when it feels like the time is right and we're ready, I will start, promoting these things, putting packages together and sending them out. We'll see. The one is kind of large, so that's a bit of a problem. I understand that, and the other one's a bit smaller and more self-contained. And we'll see. So it's been fun. I'm literally juggling 3 shows right now that I'm writing, and as a matter of fact, as soon as we're done here, I'm probably going to go write a song. So I woke up last night, and I went to bed early, and it was like I couldn't sleep, and something popped into my head, and I literally got out of bed, came down to my office, and wrote half the song.
Cool.
You
got to do that sometimes. I always keep a notebook by the side of the bed that I can, if it's I can jot it down, but if it's something longer, I can write it out.
Yeah.
And then I can go back to sleep, because otherwise I'm worried about forgetting it.
That's exactly it.
At least getting the outline of it on paper is good to do while it's fresh.
Yeah, I know I wouldn't have slept all night, because I would have had this thing running in my head. And I just get up, go down, and just do it, and it took 10 minutes, and then, then I went back to bed. So, but it's fun. I really enjoy the writing thing. And I had done some before I went to Goodspeed, and then Goodspeed was just so all encompassing. The amount of work, and you know, I just couldn't really get much else done. So I did manage to write one show, and the guy from my hometown and I wrote a piece based on the Christmas Carol, but it's a kind of a wacky, fun take on the Christmas Carol.
Uh-huh.
And Goodspeed actually has produced it now 3 times, three
Oh, wow.
Christmas in a row. We actually did it at the small theater, and it was a huge success, which I was pleased about, of course. And then we rewrote it and made it. The concept is that it's written very specifically to wherever it's being performed. So in Connecticut, all the changes are the ghosts, and so the ghosts in Connecticut were J.P. Morgan as Marley, and P.T. Barnum, and
Okay.
Benedict Arnold and Mark Twain were the ghosts, and they were all Connecticut residents.
Right.
So then we were hired by theater to transfer it and move it to Syracuse, to a really fun theater in Syracuse. So we rewrote it all with people that were famous from Syracuse. And so it can be franchised like that all around. And once the pandemic is over, we hope to do that in theaters all over the country.
Is it a big show or a smaller show?
It's actually 12 characters, so it's really not that big. A lot of doubling. The actors tend to double a lot, but it can be done bigger. Up in Syracuse, he actually expanded the cast because he wanted to use a lot of his local people. The theater there was half equity and half non-equity, so he was able to expand it, and that was fun too, to just see it a little bit bigger, but with not quite so much doubling up, but it's a very manageable show and really fun. I mean, it's a lot of laughs. The music is brilliant, and
of course, I wouldn't say anything less.
And so anybody watching this, if you got a theater somewhere that you want to, let me know.
I'll mention it to the Theater Barn. Last year we had in our calendar, we had a one-man adaptation of it.
Mm-hmm. Patrick
Spadaccino put together, and he did it. I want to say he might have been at Hart when I don't know if he did it there, but it's one of the music schools somewhere in that area that he was at, and he did the adaptation. He was also he played the one character, and he was amazing. Yeah. And that was what was on our schedule already for last Christmas. Yeah. And because it was one man and there was basically no set,
right?
There was literally a chair, a bench, and a coat rack, an old fashioned coat rack. That was and a desk. That was it.
Yeah.
He could stay up. We only have a 20 by 40 foot stage with no wings and no fly and stuff, but he was able to stay upstage, and we kept the audience back. We didn't have tables right. We do cabaret theater. So we kept people back, and we only had 6 tables. And then we also made it available via the web.
Sure.
So we had a number of people watch it that way. It was a fantastic production. But years ago, we did a different version of A Christmas Carol every year, and we did that for like 5 years. There was one musical version that we did, which it was good that we did it in a different venue because the theater was under construction at the time, because then it wasn't that great. I'll just leave it at that. But it was, so I'll definitely mention it because it's...
I mean, I think Goodspeed is still interested in doing the Connecticut version, not this coming year, of course, but there's possibility of maybe by next December we'll remount it here. I don't know. We'll see. We did have a theater in Media, Pennsylvania, which is just outside of Philly, and they really wanted it. We were all set. We had contracts already were being worked out, and we had figured out and then COVID hit, and they just had to pull the plug on it. Yeah. So that would have been our third version, and we'll see. We'll see where it goes. It's fun though. So that's how I spend my days, just sitting here writing music.
Well, I'm glad you were able to carve out a half an hour to spend with us today and talk about all the connections in the business, which has been fascinating for me, and I'm sure for some of the people as well. So I want to thank you for joining us today, and if you just want to hang out in the green room a second while I wrap up the show, we'll do that and we can chat some more.
Okay, thank you.
So Thank you for joining us today. Next week, I have Kelly Mitchell, who is the founder and host of a podcast called The Devil's Advocate. And she talks about all different types of information. So it's one thing you should watch next week so we can hear about some of the different fun stories that she has. If you're wondering, if you might see that my diffuser has been coming through the picture here, my oil today is tangerine, which is the oil of adventure, because it's always great to go on an adventure. And if you like what you see, please feel free to like my Facebook page, as well as if you're watching it on YouTube, like the YouTube page so that you're notified of upcoming episodes. And then, as always, I encourage you all to go out, make a connection, and live your best lives. Thanks for joining us, everybody.